I was slicing carrots in my kitchen when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it was the delivery man I'd ordered new gardening gloves. But when I opened the door, a stranger stood there. A man, early 30s, clean shaven, holding a backpack, smiling like he knew me. "Hi," he said casually, "I'm here about the room." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "The ad on Craigslist. The one with your picture." "You're Marion, right?" I stared at him stunned. I didn't post any ad. He looked uncertain, pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward me. There it was. My photo. An old picture, one I'd used on Facebook last year with my hair done, and Baxter, my golden retriever, curled in my lap. The ad read, "Room for rent, free for the right person. Retired widow, looking for roommate to share her beautiful home in Willow Glen. Must be quiet, respectful. Enjoy gardening and dogs. Ideal for students or calm professionals. Serious inquiries only. My phone number, my street address, my name. Everything was real except I'd never written a word of it. I'm so sorry," I told the man, heart pounding. "This is a mistake. I never posted that." He looked embarrassed. Um, okay, sorry. I guess someone's playing a prank." He left awkwardly, but I didn't go back to the carrots. I stood in the hallway for a full minute staring at nothing. This wasn't the first visitor. 2 days earlier, a young woman in scrubs had shown up. She said she worked nights at the hospital and was excited to live somewhere peaceful with a kind older woman. I thought she had the wrong house. I chalked it up to a glitch. But this was the second, or was it the third? That night, I went online. My hands trembled as I opened Craigslist and searched the housing listings. I filtered for my zip code. There it was, under shared housing. The ad had been up for 5 days. I clicked through again. The description was written in an almost mocking tone, affectionate on the surface, but with hints of sarcasm, like I was some quirky old woman looking for companionship. There were details in there that only someone who knew me personally would know. Mentions of my garden, my tendency to knit in the evenings, even a reference to my late husband's World War II medals, which I kept in a shadow box in the den. How would a stranger know that I felt the walls closing in? And that was before I scrolled to the email contact. It was anonymous, of course, a Craigslist relay address. But whoever wrote this, they wanted someone to respond, to come to my home. And somehow they had access to my private life. My first thought was a scammer. Maybe someone scraping public data, but it didn't feel random. It felt targeted. I printed the ad. Then I called my nephew, who worked in IT. He told me Craigslist wouldn't release user information without a subpoena, but he could do a trace from the email headers if I could get a reply from the poster. I replied to the ad myself with a fake inquiry. When he got the headers back, he froze. "Aunt Marion," he said carefully, the IP address. "It's local, less than 2 blocks from your home." My voice went dry. "From which house?" He hesitated. "It resolves to the Wi-Fi network next door. The name on the service is J&C Doyle Home. My daughter-in-law, Chelsea. She and my son Jared had moved in next door last year after my husband passed away. They said it was to keep an eye on me, to help me in my grieving process." At first I was touched. Now I felt cornered. Chelsea had made comments, small ones scattered over the past few months. "You know this house is so big for just one person. Maybe you should think about sharing space. Some people your age benefit from a companion, someone younger who can help out." I never thought anything of it. I trusted her. I welcomed her into this family when she was still just Jared's girlfriend. I helped them with the down payment on their first condo. I watched their cat when they travelled. I even gave her my mother's pearls on her wedding day. And now this, posting me online, turning my life into a public offer. I didn't say anything to her, not yet. I needed proof. I needed a plan. But it got worse. 3 days later, another man showed up. Older, balding, smelled faintly of cigar smoke. He said his name was Gary and that we'd emailed back and forth about him moving in by the end of the month. He asked where he could put his suitcases. I asked him to leave. That night, I filed a police report. They were sympathetic, but limited. Because it wasn't technically illegal to post a photo publicly available online. Because the ad didn't explicitly harass me. Because there was no financial fraud. But ma'am, the officer said if someone is sending people to your home without your consent, that could fall under harassment or misuse of information. We'll look into it. It was clear he didn't expect much to come of it. But I knew it was her. And I was done pretending otherwise. So I started documenting everything. Every visit, every email, every screenshot. I installed a camera above the door. I bought a small recorder for my pocket. I stopped accepting Sunday brunch invitations. Chelsea noticed. "Is everything okay, Marion?" she asked one afternoon when I politely declined a backyard BBQ. "Just tired," I said. She smiled, that tight, condescending smile she wore when she thought she was winning. But I wasn't tired. I was awake. And this time, I wasn't going to be her easy target. Stick with me until the end of this story, because what I discovered next will leave you absolutely stunned. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I still remember the first time Chelsea called me Mom. It wasn't during the wedding or some holiday toast. It was quiet, almost casual, after I brought her a bowl of soup during her second bout of bronchitis. Jared was away on a business trip, and she had refused to go to urgent care. I cooked from scratch, drove to her apartment in the rain, and sat with her for hours. She looked up from the couch, hair tangled, wrapped in an oversized blanket, and said, "Thanks, Mum." I smiled at her and didn't correct her. I didn't say, "Call me Marion." I didn't even flinch. My heart warmed. From that moment on, I started treating her not as Jared's wife, but as my own daughter. Back then, Chelsea was different. She was eager, grateful. She'd come to Sunday dinners with homemade salads and stories about her co-workers. She used to laugh at my jokes, even the bad ones. When I showed her old photos of Jared as a toddler in overalls, she cried. "You raised him right," she once said, placing a hand on mine. I believed her. When Jared told me he was proposing, I offered to help with the ring. I gave him $6,000 from my late mother's inheritance, insisting it be a gift. I told him, "Your wife should look down at that diamond and remember how much her new family loves her." When they moved into their first condo, a tiny one-bedroom with paper-thin walls, I helped co-sign the lease and gave them furniture from our storage unit. Chelsea cried when I brought over my grandmother's antique dining table. "It's beautiful," she said. "I've never had anything this special." Later, she used that table for her craft business, storing paint beneath the drawers. I didn't mind. I also didn't mind when they asked for a small loan 6 months after the wedding. Jared had taken time off work after a back injury, and Chelsea's Etsy sales had slowed. I wrote them a check for $12,500. They promised to pay it back. They never did, and I never asked. Because that's what mothers do. They show up. They give quietly. They love unconditionally. When my husband Thomas passed away unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning, Chelsea was actually the first person to reach my house. She drove over barefoot in pajamas. She sat beside me as the paramedics carried him out. She held Baxter in her arms and whispered that everything would be okay. "I'll help you through this," she promised. "You're not alone." I believed her again. The weeks after Thomas's death were blurry. Chelsea brought over meals, organized Jared's schedule. She even picked out a suit for the memorial. At the service, she spoke to every guest as if she were my daughter. She grieved with me hand in hand. That spring, they offered to move closer. Jared suggested buying the house next door, which had gone up for sale. I was hesitant, but Chelsea pushed gently. "Wouldn't it be nice to have family so close?" she said. "We can check in on you. Walk Baxter together. Keep an eye on the garden." It did sound nice, and at first it was. We hosted combined dinners. Chelsea helped me set up an Instagram account for my crochet projects. We planted tomatoes in my yard together. She laughed when I burned the cinnamon rolls. She even made me a bracelet that read, "Best Mill Ever." I wore it daily for months. When I turned 70, she threw me a surprise party complete with a backyard canopy, string lights, and my favorite lemon blueberry cake. She even printed photos of my younger self and pinned them to mason jars. Everyone commented how thoughtful she was, and I agreed. I told everyone Chelsea was like the daughter I never had. She'd earned it, or so I thought. And it wasn't just the big things. It was the little gestures that meant the most. Like the time she made a playlist of my favorite 60s and 70s music for my morning walks. Or the way she used to bring me wildflowers from the farmer's market. She knew my preferences, my decaf order, my favorite throw blanket, even the scent of lavender I sprayed on my pillow. She knew everything, and that's why the betrayal cuts so deeply now. Because real trust, isn't just about money or meals. It's about letting someone into your heart, letting them carry your grief, letting them see you in your worst moments, and never expecting they'd turn that knowledge against you. I was a widow, vulnerable, grieving, and she stepped in like a guardian angel. But angels don't create fake roommate ads. They don't try to force you out of your home by manipulating strangers into visiting. They don't smile at you at Sunday brunch while planning your erasure. And yet, here I was, remembering the way she brushed my hair before Thomas's funeral while plotting how to expose her for what she had become. It started with the teacups. Chelsea had always admired my china cabinet, a collection I inherited from my grandmother. Delicate English porcelain with hand-painted violets passed down through generations. She used to compliment it every time she walked into the dining room, but one day, without asking, she reorganized it. She said it was for aesthetic flow. She moved some cups into storage, shifted the saucers, and stacked things I had never stacked in 70 years. I stood in the doorway as she adjusted my heirlooms like they were clutter from a yard sale. I wanted to say something, but she was smiling, humming to herself, acting as if it were a favor. So I bit my tongue. It wouldn't be the last time. The little changes started to pile up, and they all had the same flavor, polite, helpful, but invasive. One evening, I came home from my book club to find Chelsea on my porch, holding Baxter's leash. "He seemed lonely," she said, "so I took him for a walk." I appreciated the gesture. Baxter loved walks. But she had used my spare key. I hadn't given her permission to take it. And when I checked the key rack, the backup key was still missing. The next morning, I found Baxter's treats rearranged in a new jar, labeled with his name in decorative vinyl. She had been inside my pantry. Again. Then came the health questions. "Have you noticed you forget things more often lately? You mentioned this movie last week too. Maybe it's time to get your memory checked. I worry about you being alone so much. What if you fall and no one's there?" The first time she said it, I laughed. The second time, I faked a smile. The third time, I asked her directly what she was implying. "Nothing," she said sweetly. "I just want what's best for you." That phrase, "what's best for you," became her mantra. She used it when she switched my laundry detergent because she didn't like the scent. She used it when she adjusted the thermostat for safety, even though I was always cold. She used it when she replaced the rug in my hallway with a non-slip mat that clashed with everything. And she used it when she gently suggested I downsize my home. It's just too much space for one person, Marion. You could make a fortune selling it, or even just rent out a room, ease the burden. That word burden, she said it like I was a spreadsheet, like she was calculating me. I noticed the way Jared began to follow her lead. He stopped calling me on his lunch breaks. He no longer asked me to help fix the garden shed. When I invited them over for dinner, he replied with Chelsea-made plans already. When I reminded him of our family photo session on Mother's Day, he said they had other commitments. They started treating me like a fragile decoration, something to dust occasionally, then ignore. Then came the passwords. One day my cable went out. Chelsea insisted she could call the provider for me. She had me read the security question, my mother's maiden name, and the PIN. Later that week, I noticed my Netflix recommendations had changed. Entire shows I'd never watched were marked "Continue watching." They had logged in. They were using my account. I confronted her. "Oh," she said, with a light laugh. "Jared set it up so we could use it when ours glitched. You don't mind, do you?" I didn't say I minded, but inside I did. My world was shrinking, one polite intrusion at a time. I felt myself becoming invisible. Then came the social decisions. Chelsea began answering questions on my behalf in group settings. When our neighbor asked if I was going to the community art show, Chelsea said, "No, Marion gets overwhelmed in crowds." When the mailman asked if I'd be out of town after noticing stopped deliveries, she said, "We're just keeping things light for her these days." As if my voice was a luxury, not a right. I tried to talk to Jared, but he brushed it off. "Chelsea just worries. She means well." He said it with that worn-out, calm tone, the one people use when they're trying to avoid conflict. It hurt, more than I expected. He had stopped seeing me as an individual and started seeing me through Chelsea's filter. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were everywhere. She began suggesting I donate certain items, declutter, she called it. Family photo albums, my sewing machine, old letters. "It's emotional clutter," she explained, smiling. "You'll feel lighter without it." When I resisted, she changed strategy. "You know, if something happened to you, I'd have to go through all of this. I'm just trying to prepare ahead of time." Prepare ahead of time, as if my absence was a matter of scheduling. Then the final blow. She brought over pamphlets, glossy, colourful, and smiling. They were brochures for senior companion living options. Not assisted living, not nursing homes, just co-living spaces for independent seniors with shared values. She pitched it like a product launch. Think of it as choosing your own adventure. You'd have more company, more security, maybe even meet someone interesting. I stared at her across my dining table, the same table she once called sacred, the one where I had served her homemade soup, decorated birthday cakes, and shared stories about my late husband. And now she was asking me to leave it all behind, for convenience. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just said one thing. "Did you think this through? Or did you just decide I was ready to disappear?" She blinked just once, and then changed the subject. That night, I walked through my house, touched the corners, opened the drawers, sat in the living room until the lights outside dimmed. It was my home. It was my life. And I was beginning to realize someone wanted to rewrite it. It began with the family group chat. I wasn't removed, not exactly. But one morning, I noticed I could no longer send messages. My texts showed up as delivered, but no one replied. When I called Jared to ask if the group was still active, he said casually, Oh, Chelsea started a new one, just for quick planning stuff. Quick planning stuff. Without me. That week, I learned about their vacation from Facebook. They had gone to Oregon. Photos of wineries, beaches. Baxter, was in one of the photos on a leash licking ice cream from Chelsea's hand. No one had asked to take him. My spare key was gone again. When I confronted Jared, he said, "We figured you wouldn't mind. You weren't doing anything that week." I wasn't doing anything because I'd spent 4 days waiting for a plumber Chelsea recommended, who never showed. It was the first of many quiet removals from my own life. My birthday came and went without a card. No dinner, no visit, just a voicemail. "Hey Marion, hope you're relaxing today. We've got a lot going on, but we'll stop by soon. Love ya." They didn't stop by. I spent the evening alone. I microwaved lasagna for one. Baxter curled up at my feet, sensing something was off. I cried into his fur. The following Monday, I found one of my garden benches missing. The old iron one from the back patio, the one Thomas proposed on. Chelsea had given it away. "Jared said you hadn't sat on it in years," she explained. "The neighbours wanted it for their kids' corner. It's better than letting it rust." I stared at her, speechless. She was giving away my history, and she wasn't done. That same week, she arranged for a handyman to clean up the attic. I hadn't asked for this. I only found out when I came home from the grocery store to find strangers moving boxes out to the curb. Boxes labeled winter clothes, old photos, Christmas decorations. My Christmas decorations. I screamed. I didn't mean to, it just came out sharp and hoarse. The workers froze. Chelsea ran in, clearly irritated. "Marion, you're overreacting. I asked them to help. This stuff is outdated. You need to let go." Let go of what I asked, breathless. "My memories." She rolled her eyes and walked away. That night, I pulled every box off the curb one by one. My back hurt for 3 days, but I didn't care. I repacked everything myself and dragged it into the guest bedroom. When Jared asked why I was so dramatic lately, I realized he hadn't even known about the attic purge. Or maybe he had and didn't care. Then came the budgeting help. Chelsea offered to optimize my finances, said she could help lower bills, find subscriptions I didn't use. I refused. A week later, I got a letter from my bank. My automatic payments had been changed. My cable package downgraded. My landline was disconnected. I had never authorized it. Chelsea brushed it off. "I was just trying to streamline. You don't really need all those channels. And who uses a landline anymore?" I did. That phone had been the last number my sister dialed before she passed. She never asked. She just decided. She decided a lot of things. She decided my pantry was cluttered and rearranged it. I couldn't find the sugar for 2 weeks. She decided my bathroom was unsafe and replaced the rug with a stark plastic mat that smelled like bleach. She decided my wardrobe was outdated and donated 2 bags of clothes without telling me. I found the receipts in her car. When I told Jared, he sighed. "You're being harsh. Chelsea's just trying to help." Help! The word lost all meaning. It didn't feel like help. It felt like erasure. Slow, systematic, sanitized. Every part of my identity chipped away under the guise of assistance. And then, the houseplants. I had 37 of them. Succulents. Orchids. A spider plant I'd kept alive since the Reagan administration. Plants my husband had named. Plants I spoke to. One morning, I found 12 of them missing. Chelsea said they were too dusty, claimed she gave them to a neighbor's daughter who wanted to learn about plant care. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because by then I was afraid I wouldn't be heard. Or worse, I'd be gaslighted again. So I started writing things down. Every incident, every change, every object moved or discarded without permission. I filled a notebook with dates, times, and screenshots. It made me feel sane, anchored. But then came the worst insult yet. She changed my bedroom. Without asking. It was a Tuesday. I'd gone to get my prescription refilled. When I returned, the walls were painted beige, my lace curtains replaced with blackout drapes. My sewing machine was gone. The bed had new sheets, a bland grey. My room, my sanctuary. Chelsea smiled as she showed me. I figured a refresh would lift your mood. Neutral tones are calming. I even donated some of the older decor. You're welcome. I walked out, locked myself in the guest bathroom, called my friend Lorraine and sobbed like a child. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I slept on the couch, wrapped in an old Afghan, next to the box of ornaments I'd rescued from the attic. Chelsea never apologized. Jared didn't notice. They were too busy posting pictures from their wine-tasting weekend, taken in my garden, standing in front of the rose trellis Thomas had planted. Chelsea was wearing one of my scarves. I recognized the pattern. I had knit it the year Jared got accepted into grad school. It had been tucked in a drawer. She must have taken it during the bedroom refresh. I realized then this wasn't clumsiness. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't just help. It was displacement. It was claiming, and one day soon, if I didn't do something, it would be complete. It began with an envelope, not a fancy one, no wax seal, no gold trim. Just a plain white envelope tucked beneath my welcome mat. No name, no return address. But the handwriting on the front was familiar. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no greeting. It read, "You don't know what she's doing behind your back. Search her laptop, she keeps everything. Look for a folder named Transition Plan. Password hint your cat's name lowercase." I stood frozen in the doorway. My hands trembled, though the day was warm. I didn't have a cat. Not anymore. Years ago, I had a black and white tuxedo cat named Muffin. She died before Jared got married. I had mentioned her once at dinner, just once. Chelsea had made a joke about people who name pets after food. She remembered. Later that evening, I walked Baxter like nothing had happened. I waved to the neighbors, watered the tomatoes, and then I waited. Around 10 p.m., Chelsea and Jared left for their usual Wednesday movie night. They were predictable, always gone for at least 3 hours. I had helped them set up their spare key lockbox on the side of their porch. I knew the code, Jared's birthday. Inside their house, everything was spotless. Cold, smelled faintly of artificial lemon. I went straight to the home office, the one Chelsea used for her freelance consulting work. Her laptop sat on the desk. Open. Charging. I tapped the spacebar. It blinked awake. Password screen. I typed Muffin. The screen unlocked. My stomach flipped. There it was, a folder on the desktop labeled Transition Plan. M. I clicked. The files inside were a mix of Word documents, spreadsheets, and PDFs. I opened one at random. It was a timeline. Phase 1, build trust, emotional integration. Phase 2, introduce vulnerabilities, memory, health, safety. Phase 3, establish dependency, financial household access. Phase 4, begin public reframing. Senior loneliness, inability to manage property. Phase 5, justify intervention, family consensus, neighbor sympathy. Phase 6, execute transition, legal guardianship discussions, living arrangements. Each phase had dates, notes, tactics. Under Phase 3, one bullet point stood out. Suggest Craigslist roommate, option anonymous test for resistance. I gasped aloud. It was her. She had posted the ad to gauge how much control she could exert, how much pushback I would give. There was more. Another file, property transition prep docs LSX. It was a spreadsheet of my assets, my home's assessed value, an inventory of major furniture and antiques. a column labeled Emotional Value Assessment with notes like Dining Table High Emotional Resistance, Delay Removal, China Set Moderate Resistance, Reframe as Safety Risk, Backyard Shed Low Resistance, Donation Option. She had rated my belongings based on how much I would fight her for them. Then I opened a document titled End State Vision.docx. It was written like a business pitch. Objective: gradually transition Marion into a co-living situation that promotes her safety while freeing up real estate for more productive use by immediate family. Outcome: property, either transferred or co-owned under managed trust. Emotional and social resistance minimized via narrative control and progressive disengagement. Long-term, Marion lives comfortably off-site, family assumes maintenance and ownership duties. Narrative publicly remains, we're helping her transition. She had written a strategic roadmap for removing me from my own life. I suddenly remembered all those business webinars she used to host, how to manage high-stakes transitions, client retention through storytelling, narrative framing in brand architecture. She wasn't just organizing my cabinets. She was rebranding me as a burden, as a relic, as a liability to be repackaged and moved. And Jared, he had access to the same files. His initials were on several comments in the margins. One read, "We'll need to frame this as her choice. Avoid drama with neighbors." They were planning my exit like a hostile acquisition. My hands clenched into fists. I should have been devastated, but instead, I felt a strange, terrifying calm. They thought they had won, that I was weak, that I was unaware. But now I had proof. On my way out, I took photos of every file, every screen. I emailed them to myself. And I made sure to carefully close the laptop exactly as I found it. Then I locked their front door and walked home. The next morning, Chelsea dropped off a bag of organic wellness tea. "Just a little something to help you sleep," she said with her trademark grin. I smiled back. "I've been sleeping wonderfully," I replied. She blinked. For the first time, I saw her unsure, and it thrilled me. When Chelsea first moved in next door to Marion, she genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. It had been Jared's idea, let's buy the house next door. She'll need help now that Dad's gone. Chelsea agreed. She was all in, supportive, compassionate. The truth was, she felt bad for Marion. She had never lost a parent, never experienced the kind of grief Marion wore, like a shawl, always present, always visible. Chelsea thought being nearby might offer comfort, or at least stability, but she hadn't expected Marion to be so complicated. At first, Marion seemed grateful, kind even. Chelsea would bring over muffins, help with Baxter, suggest recipes or errands. Marion always said thank you, but there was something distant in her tone. Formal, controlled. Chelsea tried harder. She offered to set up autopay for bills, streamline the pantry, fix the tech issues that constantly frustrated Marion. But every offer was met with either passive silence or what Chelsea called the Marion smile. That tight-lipped, condescending expression that said, "I'm being polite because I don't trust you." It reminded Chelsea of her own mother. Cold, judging, always watching. Chelsea hated that smile, and slowly she began to resent the house next door and the woman inside it. Because no matter what she did, Marion always seemed to tolerate her instead of accepting her. And Jared, he was caught in the middle, always tiptoeing, always saying, "Let's not cause waves." Chelsea had waves inside her. She remembered the day Marion looked around the brunch table and said, "This reminds me of when Thomas was alive. We had real family then." Chelsea had cooked the entire meal, cleaned, decorated, bought fresh flowers, and Marion had erased her with one sentence. Chelsea had smiled, then cried alone in the bathroom afterward, so she began to distance herself emotionally. And then, strategically. It wasn't malicious, she told herself. It was protective. Because Marian was old-fashioned, resistant. She refused help, then blamed Chelsea for not understanding her needs. She never said thank you for the iPad tutorial. Never acknowledged the groceries Chelsea bought just because. Never admitted she needed support. And worst of all, she weaponized her helplessness. Chelsea knew the signs. Her degree in behavioral health wasn't just for show. She had worked with clients who clung to martyrdom as a shield. People who said no just to stay in control. Chelsea had grown up in that kind of household. She wasn't going to let it repeat. So yes, she began planning. Soft influence, not control. Frameworks, not coercion. She built the transition plan, the way she built any strategy for a high-conflict client phased steps, emotional framing, behavioral mapping. She logged Marian's behaviors like data points. She looked for patterns of resistance and escalation. She did what professionals do. She created structure where there was chaos. She wasn't trying to hurt Marian. She was trying to protect Jared and herself. She had seen marriages break under the weight of a mother-in-law's emotional demands. She had watched friends become strangers when their partners were caught in generational wars. She wouldn't let it happen here. The Craigslist ad, yes, that had been hers, but it was never meant to be seen. It was a test, a behavioral experiment. Would Marian notice? Would she panic? Would she ask for help? Chelsea never expected strangers to show up. She had listed the ad anonymously, but one of them tracked the address using reverse lookup. It was a mistake, one she regretted, but not enough to stop the plan. Because after the ad incident, Marian had become worse, more guarded, more bitter, more combative. Chelsea knew she had to accelerate. She started removing clutter, streamlining the house, creating proof of safety concerns. She even staged a fall risk, moving a rug slightly out of place and catching her own foot during a visit. Jared saw it. He panicked. It worked. Chelsea wasn't proud, but she had goals. She wanted that property, not for money, for freedom, for space to build something lasting, for the child she and Jared hadn't yet told anyone they were trying to have. There was a plan for a nursery. She had already designed it in the room Marian once used for her sewing machine. She had a vision. Marian was the last gatekeeper, and once the emotional detachment was complete, the transition would be seamless. Chelsea didn't hate Marian. She just didn't believe Marian should be in charge anymore. She told herself, this is what love looks like when you've run out of patience. Marian didn't tell anyone about what she'd seen on Chelsea's laptop, not yet. She needed someone she could trust. Someone outside the family. Someone smart enough to help, but discreet enough not to raise alarm. That person turned out to be Lena Marsh, her old friend from the neighborhood committee. Lena had retired from a 30-year career in corporate compliance and data forensics. Most people just knew her as the woman who organizes the Halloween potluck. But Marian had once seen Lena single-handedly prove a city contractor was double-billing senior homeowners. She didn't forget things like that. So over tea and shortbread cookies, Marian told her everything. Not just the Craigslist ad, not just the spreadsheet of her possessions. Everything. Lena didn't blink. She opened her laptop and started typing before Marian had finished the second story. We're going to build a timeline, Lena said. Then we're going to cross-reference it with motive access and pattern of behavior. And then we find out how deep this goes. Marian blinked. You sound like you're building a case. I am, Lena said flatly. You're not just being manipulated, Marian. You're being removed. They started with small things, bank records, subscription changes, Credit inquiries. Lena noticed that Marian's insurance policy had been altered 6 months ago, switching from paper notices to digital. Only problem, Marian never used email for financial statements. Then came the mail. Lena helped Marian request a digital delivery report from USPS. Turns out several pieces of mail had been forwarded or intercepted over the past 3 months. Chelsea had submitted a temporary address change to assist with document sorting according to the form. Marian had never signed it. Then there were the utilities. Lena pulled public logs and found that Chelsea had added herself as a secondary authorized contact on 2 of Marian's accounts, water and internet. Once someone's on these, Lena explained they can start making changes, closing service, transferring names. It's like a soft transfer of control. Marian felt sick. She remembered when her light bill mysteriously changed rate plans, when her Wi-Fi password was updated without her knowing. Chelsea always claimed the companies had messed up. They hadn't. She had. Lena leaned back in her chair. We're beyond theory now. This is intentional suppression. You need someone legal. Marian wasn't ready for court. Not yet. But she was ready for a lawyer. So they called Angela Torres, a local elder rights attorney Lena had worked with on a zoning case years ago. Angela met them in Marian's living room, took notes, nodded at the documents, and then said something Marian had never heard before. You may be dealing with elder coercion under California statute. Depending on your financial dependencies, it may also qualify as fiduciary interference, especially if she's preparing to transfer your property without clear consent. Marian didn't understand every legal term, but she understood this. She had rights. Angela advised her to start keeping a voice diary, a simple recording of her thoughts, feelings, and reactions to daily interactions with Chelsea and Jared. Memory is powerful, Angela said, but documentation wins cases. Lena bought Marian a new phone, one with a hidden app that could record conversations discreetly triggered by voice or keywords. She also set up a secure cloud folder to back up everything automatically. Within the week, Marian had recordings of Chelsea making comments like, "You really shouldn't worry about those papers. Jared and I already took care of it. Don't stress yourself with the bills. I manage all of them now. We've already started clearing the guest room. It's better for when you transition." Transition, that word again. Then one day, the mail delivered something unexpected, a property tax notice, addressed jointly to Marian Doyle and Jared Doyle. Marian froze. Her deed had never had Jared's name on it. Angela reviewed it. The original title was unchanged, but someone had submitted a quitclaim deed online. It hadn't been fully processed yet, but the intent was there. They were trying to add Jared to the house, without Marian's knowledge, without her signature. Angela's eyes narrowed. If this was submitted fraudulently, they've crossed from manipulation into outright real estate fraud. Marian felt dizzy, but she wasn't scared anymore. She was furious. Lena smiled darkly. Time to go on offense. Over the next 3 weeks, they compiled everything. Screenshots of Chelsea's laptop plan, ISP records confirming upload origins, evidence of forged forwarding requests, audio recordings of coercive language, financial and utility tampering, legal forms filled out without consent. Angela contacted a trusted private investigator to corroborate timelines and connect digital footprints. He found even more. Chelsea had contacted a realtor 6 months ago, asked about off-market sale options, asked whether homes occupied by elderly family could be sold with family signatures. The PI pulled phone records. Chelsea had made the call from her home office the same day she brought Marian a pie and suggested downsizing could be fun. That was the final push Marian needed. Angela drafted a cease and desist letter. Lena printed everything and compiled a dossier thicker than a phone book. And Marian, she stood taller, firmer. Her voice no longer trembled when she said, "This is my house, my life, and I am not going anywhere." It was supposed to be a Sunday brunch. That's what Chelsea called it in the group message. Spring garden brunch. Bring a dishware florals. It would be held in Marian's backyard. Of course, the same backyard Chelsea had slowly overtaken with string lights, Pinterest-style place cards, and a catered mimosa bar. She hadn't asked Marian. She had merely informed her, but Marian agreed eagerly. She had something to reveal, and this time, the guests weren't just friends and neighbors. Angela, her lawyer, would be there too. So would Lena. And so would Jared, of course. Chelsea had invited him with a reminder. It's important your mum feels supported. Be on time. He had no idea how supported she would feel. At 11:00 a.m., the garden filled with small talk and clinking glasses. Chelsea moved among the guests like a hostess on morning television, offering croissants, explaining the lavender centerpiece theme, laughing too loudly at mild jokes. Marian sat under the arbor Thomas built 20 years ago. She wore her best linen blouse, the one with pearl buttons. Her hair was pinned back, her posture regal. Angela stood beside her, quiet and composed. At 11:23 a.m., Marian stood. She tapped her glass. The crowd hushed. "I want to thank everyone for coming." She began, her voice strong, clear. "It's good to see so many familiar faces, and a few unfamiliar ones too. I know most of you have heard me talk about my garden, my family, my late husband Thomas. But today I'd like to talk about something else." Chelsea's smile froze. Marian continued, "I've spent the past year watching small things disappear from my life. Not just objects, autonomy, respect, privacy. And at first I thought I was imagining it. I thought, maybe I was being old. Maybe I was forgetting things. Maybe I was overreacting." She looked directly at Chelsea, but then I found proof. Gasps rippled through the group. I found a digital roadmap created on a laptop inside the home next door that outlined how to gradually remove me from my house, my finances, my relationships. Step by step. Manipulation framed as care. Theft disguised as assistance. Chelsea stepped forward, laughing nervously. "Marian, what are you?" Angela interrupted. "We have documentation, dated files, a full forensic report, IP trace logs, a signed forged change of address request, and a draft of a quitclaim deed listing your name without your consent." The air tightened. Chelsea turned to Jared. "She's twisting everything. She's been paranoid for months. You know that." But Jared's face was blank. Marian pulled out a small speaker and pressed play. Chelsea's voice emerged crystal clear. "We've already started clearing the guest room. It's better for when you transition. Don't stress yourself with the bills. I manage all of them now. We can just call it a wellness nudge. Everyone your age eventually moves on." The guests stared. Some covered their mouths. One woman stepped back entirely. Marian looked at Jared. "You asked me once why I don't trust easily anymore. This is why." Jared swallowed. "Chelsea, is this true?" Chelsea's voice rose brittle and defensive. "You've seen her, Jared. She forgets things. She let Baxter eat from the compost pile. She can't manage the—" Angela cut in. "That's not evidence. That's spin. What matters is that you used those moments to justify consolidating power. Without consent. You used systems built for elder protection to disguise a property grab." Chelsea's jaw clenched. "This isn't a courtroom." Angela calmly replied, "Not yet." Lena stepped forward and handed Jared a file. Inside photos of Chelsea's transition plan, her notes, her bullet points about Marian's emotional resistance levels. He stared at it in disbelief. This, this is manipulation, he whispered. No, Chelsea said. This is prevention. This is what families do when their elders refuse to see the inevitable. Marian stepped closer. No, Chelsea. This is what predators do when they think someone has no fight left in them. Silence fell. Then Marian turned to the guests. I've spent the past year being spoken over, gently pushed aside, repackaged. But I'm still here, and I remember everything. She looked at her son one last time. I wanted you to see it with your own eyes. And now you have. Chelsea was pale. Her mouth opened, then closed. Jared said nothing. Angela gently placed her hand on Marian's shoulder. We'll take it from here. Guests began murmuring. Some left. Others offered hugs. No one spoke to Chelsea. The brunch dissolved. Marian remained under the arbor arms, crossed over her chest eyes, scanning the garden that had once felt like a prison, and now felt like a fortress reclaimed. For the first time in over a year, she felt air in her lungs that wasn't filtered through permission. And for the first time in over a year, Chelsea had nothing left to say. 3 days after the garden confrontation, Chelsea was served. Not with tea, not with grace, with papers. Angela filed a petition for elder financial exploitation prevention and property protection, citing clear evidence of coercive behavior, attempted title fraud, and misuse of personal data. Chelsea didn't see it coming. The sheriff's deputy handed her the envelope in front of 2 neighbors. She laughed awkwardly, waving it off. Just a misunderstanding. But the moment she read the contents, her hand tightened. Because inside, in black and white, was a motion for emergency injunction, preventing her or Jared from accessing, altering, or selling any of Marian's assets, including the house. Angela had also filed a fraud report with the county recorder's office, invalidating the forged quitclaim deed Chelsea had submitted weeks earlier. The county flagged it. Official note: suspicious activity detected. Deed was not properly witnessed, and signature does not match verified records. Rejected. Chelsea's move had failed, but that wasn't all. Angela had also contacted the State Department of Adult Protective Services. She submitted their case with supporting materials, a digital copy of Chelsea's transition plan, financial account access logs, audio recordings of pressure tactics, a list of unauthorized medical mail and utility interventions. The state launched an inquiry within 48 hours. It wasn't a full criminal case yet, but it was a paper wall that now surrounded Marian like armor. Chelsea tried to spin it. She sent emails to family members, claimed Marian was confused, that the audio was taken out of context, that it was just a project draft, nothing real. No one believed her. Because then came the trust update. With Angela's help, Marian had established a revocable living trust, transferring the legal ownership of her house finances and valuables into a controlled legal entity. One where she was trustee, and one where Chelsea's name never appeared again. Jared. He wasn't removed, but he was placed under strict succession rules. He wouldn't inherit a cent unless he completed 5 years of no legal infractions, no asset disputes, and no family interventions. He didn't argue, not after reading the trust conditions aloud with Angela present. Chelsea stared at the document and said one word: unbelievable. Angela smiled. It's completely believable. It's just not yours anymore. Then came the biggest twist of all. Angela revealed that Chelsea's Craigslist ad, the one she'd thought was anonymous, had been matched to her IP address and geolocation via subpoena. With Lena's tech notes, the county DA was now considering a misdemeanor identity misrepresentation charge under California Business and Professions Code, paragraph 175305. In plain terms, It was potentially illegal to impersonate someone online, even with their public photo, if it resulted in confusion, uninvited visitors, or financial risk. Chelsea went silent. Angela had one last move. "We've drafted a civil restraining order," she said calmly. "Unless Marian says otherwise, you are not to enter her home, speak on her behalf, or alter any service in her name. Violation will result in a court citation." Chelsea opened her mouth, then closed it. Jared finally spoke. "Chelsea, stop." He didn't say "I'm sorry." He didn't defend her. He just said stop. And for the first time, she listened. In the weeks that followed, the investigation remained open. Chelsea's consulting contracts began to quietly disappear. Jared moved into a rental across town alone. Marian's story became known in the community, shared in whispers and nods of respect. The rose garden bloomed again, brighter than it had in years. One neighbor brought over a pie. Another left a note. "We always knew you were sharper than they gave you credit for." Marian smiled. She didn't need revenge. She had boundaries. She had protection. She had peace. And legally, that was far more satisfying than any courtroom speech. 3 months had passed since the garden confrontation. The roses had returned deep, crimson, wild white, delicate pink, just as Thomas liked them. The shed had been repainted. The pantry, reorganized by Marian, was back to its original order. The china cabinet gleamed, and Marian had begun to breathe again. She started her mornings with coffee on the porch, just her and Baxter watching the world move gently by. No more unexpected visitors from Craigslist. No helpful suggestions about downsizing. No sudden transitions. The silence was healing. One morning, Lena stopped by with a small envelope. Inside, a letter from the district attorney's office. Chelsea had been issued a formal warning for online impersonation and unauthorized intent to exploit a senior citizen. No jail, no fines. But the message was clear. "We're watching." Marian didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She had learned that real justice didn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it came with signatures, with limits, with quiet strength that refused to be moved. Jared visited twice since the order, both times alone. Both times apologetic, but cautious, unsure of how to bridge what had been broken. The second time, Marian poured tea. They sat on the porch, no accusations. Just pauses. Just presence. "I didn't see it," Jared said finally. "I didn't want to see it." Marian didn't respond right away. She let the words linger, then said softly, "That's what made it easy for her." He nodded. "I'm sorry." "I know." That was all. No grand forgiveness. No tearful reunion. Just space. Real, honest space where healing could begin. Later that evening, Marian opened her email. There were messages from 2 neighbors asking her to speak at the community meeting on financial awareness for seniors. Another from a local librarian hoping to start a storytelling night and asking if Marian would be the first guest. She said yes to both, not because she wanted to become a symbol, but because she now understood something deeper. She wasn't alone. She wasn't crazy, and she wasn't just old. She was experienced, resourceful, still valuable, still here. She started journaling again, baking again, even joined a local photography club. One of her photos, a close-up of dew on her rose petals, won second prize in the regional newsletter. One night, she sat at her kitchen table, wrote a letter, and slid it into an envelope labeled, "In case I forget who I am." Inside it, she wrote, "You've been through worse. You gave away too much. But you got it back, not by yelling, not by fighting, but by remembering your worth. You are not a burden. You are not an object. You are not invisible. You are the root of this family tree. And even when the branches rot, the roots hold." She placed it in her drawer, not because she needed it today, but because she knew someone someday might. Final narration to viewers. If someone in your life is slowly taking away your voice piece by piece, don't wait for the final straw. Speak, write, record, ask questions, and never ever forget. Your age is not your weakness, it is your power. If you've ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or managed by someone who claimed to love you, tell your story in the comments. We're listening. And tell us, what city are you watching from today?